to open the meeting here at 5:30. And we're going to start with opening the consent agenda. And we'll start off with the previous minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the previous minutes?
I'll make it.
Okay, we'll start with roll. All in favor, Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
And I think, let me see, is that all we have?
That's it so far.
Okay. Okay, next we're going to go to the policies. Let's see. Lynn, was the policies in a separate email?
It should have been in a separate attachment. I'm trying to get to mine as well. I can always share my screen.
That might be best. I can't seem to locate it.
I don't see them on the email.
I see it.
They
I don't see it either.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find them in Doreen's pile. Okay. I think they are not there. Give me 1 second and then we'll show you the policy. If you want to do it this way, I can show you the policies from the NMV meeting. Wondering if you want to circle back to policy,
Okay.
Polly, because this will take me a little bit to pull this up.
Sure. So then let's move on to, wait a minute, hold on. Let me get up there. Reports, which we don't have any, and agenda preview and prioritization. Does anything need to change order?
I don't believe so.
I didn't see the Enosburg Elementary School Spotlight on School portion on it, and I know Joanne Allen's on here to help. She created a video about the Children's Literature Foundation work this year.
Okay.
Can we do that right after recognition of visitors?
Yes. Okay, so next we are going to go to the recognition of visitors, and if there's any public comment. If there are any visitors in the meeting, please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Ann Larrabee. I'm the librarian at Berkshire. Hi, Joanne.
Hello.
And and I have a son at Enosburg High School, so I'm just kind of listening in. I don't have any specific questions.
Okay, thanks, Anne.
Welcome.
Any other visitors tonight?
Yes. Hi, I'm Joanne Allen from Enosburg Elementary School, and Michelle asked me to pop in for a few minutes, so it's nice to see everyone.
Yeah, nice to have you. And then Caroline.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm trying to get my camera working, but it's not. I'm just listening in because I have a daughter at Enosburg High School.
Nice. Well, thanks for coming.
Hi, Polly. It's Lisa Hango. I'm also having video trouble tonight, so I'm just here listening. And if anybody has any questions for me, I'm here, but I don't know what's going on with my video.
I can relate wholeheartedly. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no public comment and you're all just here to be viewers, then we'll move on to the spotlight. And so I guess that's you, Joanne.
Yeah. So this past year, I co-wrote the grant through the Children's Literacy Foundation with our district grant writer, Heather Wright Moore, or Heather Moore, she goes by. And we were lucky to have been awarded $25,000 worth of programming. And so that I didn't speak too much, I created a short video. So Michelle will pop that on. And then if you have questions after, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, here goes. Hoping my internet works pretty good. Can I skip that? I think so, right?
Dzień dobry.
Oh my gosh.
Witaj w pokażu jak zrobić golonki.
Sorry,
Today I'm going to show
everyone.
you how to
Hold
make
on a
cabbage rolls.
second.
And by the way, I'm Polish.
Having cabbage rolls for dinner, Michelle.
I know it. I'm telling you. I told you, Lynn. I don't know. I'm doing this. So let me go back. Sorry, folks. Oh my
It's
goodness.
okay.
Good.
Polish, and I grew up
Oh
helping
my
my dad
goodness,
make
stop
cabbage rolls.
that. Joanne, do you happen to have it up on your screen?
I don't know if, oh, well, I don't, but let me see if I
Okay.
can grab it.
All right, folks. Need to hold you up here, but I know I had it all ready to go, and look what happened. I can't.
Heard there's worse things that have popped up on these Zoom meetings.
The night is still young, right?
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, I think I
Okay, here
have
it
Joanne.
is. Did you get it? Can you see my screen or no? You can't.
Yes, I see yours
Yes.
now. Okay.
Okay, you can
let's
see
go
mine?
do it.
Okay.
Probably $10,000 worth of grant. And all of those folks are staying here in Enosburg Falls. We're going to do events for your parents. Who's going
I
to
think it's playing someplace else too. Let me go back and check here. I think it's going twice. Okay, here we go.
Every single one of you will have chosen 10 brand new books.
She's on her computer right now. She's doing a meeting. So there we are. Any
That's great.
questions? Yeah, it was, even though we got cut short, makes me teary thinking about all of the great opportunities, and we are going to be able to reschedule. So that's the best news of everything. And the kids just loved all of the extra things that we got to do. It was fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great exposure too, to actually talk with authors and musicians, and that's great.
Yeah.
Good job.
And Joanne's done an excellent job. She worked around teacher schedules, co-curricular schedules, all sorts of events that were happening. And I know she was heartbroken when we had to, when we went to remote learning, because we missed some of these other really important things, but really thought you might enjoy seeing a great little snapshot, especially little videos of the kids. Haven't we missed them all? But yeah. Joanne does some wonderful things, and I'm so glad that she got a chance to spotlight it tonight.
Thanks, Michelle.
So
Thank you.
Any questions, friends? I'd love to answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, it's Gavin. Can we get a link to that video? So I had a tough time hearing it on my end, so just so I can listen to it again and watch it again.
Yep, Joanne, I'll forward the link you sent to me, which I couldn't share with you properly. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay. Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Go ahead, Lynn.
Before you jump off, I just want to thank you. You have been pretty inspirational in terms of your enthusiasm in the library and the work that you're doing around reading and children's books and in the enrichment opportunities and the engineering things as well. So I just wanted to thank you. You've added a lot to that position, and the work you've done to go out there and get those grants has made a big difference in Enosburg. So thank you for joining us tonight and for everything you're doing at Enosburg.
And the story walk goes up this weekend, so that'll be one more thing to look forward to. So yeah.
Send us pictures and we'll put it on our Facebook page.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, Lynn, are you wanting to go back to those policies, or you want me to keep on going?
Either way, I have them up now, so it's totally up to you.
Why don't we do the policies and take care of that part of the meeting?
Okay, so we have, there were no policies for your side. That's why we couldn't find them, because we had canceled a couple of our policy meetings, so all the policies had kind of worked their way out for this side of it. There was a policy that we were working on for the NMV side, and we've had to, so many things have happened in the last 6 months. It's a little hard to remember some of the things we talked about last year when these two communities were merging into one unified district. So one of the policies that the NMV side has been working to develop is the elementary school choice policy, so the in-district transfer procedures for the NMV. So I have those to put up, and I want to give you a little context. So Morgan and I worked to unpack what it said in terms of your academic attendance in your articles of agreement. So you had written that in academic years 1920 and 2021, each student in the grades for which the new union district operates multiple school buildings will attend the school that a student residing in that town would have attended in academic year 1819. Provided, however, that the new union district board may grant a parent or guardian's request for student enrollment in a different school operated by the new union district based on individual student circumstances and superintendent's determination of the school's capacity to serve the child. So what we're looking at is how this procedure is going to work in NMV, and I wanted to just have this conversation with you and just check in and make sure that have you discuss whether or not you want to maintain that you won't make that shift for elementary school choice until the following year, or have a conversation about whether or not you want to be in alignment with the NMV timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to start with here. You see the one with policy
Look how pretty.
procedure? Which screen can you see?
I can see the wedding picture.
Oh, that's not what I wanted you to see. Sorry.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. So yeah, didn't mean to do that. I think I hit the wrong button. So this is the in-district transfer procedure that NMV has developed. It's not just NMV that has developed it, it has been our policy committee. So the principals here have been a part of these conversations. So what they're setting up is that we're concerned about capacity, and we want to make sure that we do this really thoughtfully. So they will have a maximum of 10 students that can attend in a school other than the school of their residency. They will have an application process that they will go through. They'll fill out an application. There'll be deadlines that are embedded in the application. If someone's child decides that they want to go to another school and they have a younger sibling, when that younger sibling is school age, that child would be given priority. If there are more than 10, we would have a lottery system. We will have a lottery system to determine who is going to be able to transfer. We very much have tuned into capacity because some of our schools have greater capacity than others. So we are very mindful that we have to step carefully here so that this is not pushing a school into a situation where they're having to hire because they have too many kids in one grade level. So we have leaned into the idea of using our optimal average range in our class size policy as kind of one of the determining factors to see whether or not there's room. So that would still, if our max class size is 25, our optimal range would be somewhere between like 18 and 20 or 15 and 20. So it would still leave some room on the other side of that range for students moving in to that community. So that would be a reason for us to not consider a transfer if there wasn't enough room. Once a student transfers, they're allowed to stay in that school until they matriculate into high school. This has been written carefully because what we don't want to see are kids and parents shifting back and forth between schools, because we don't want this to be a reactive. If something happens in one school, rather than staying and working it out, you're wanting to jump to another school. So this will be end of the year or beginning of the year transfers only, and there'll have to be some notification. So if a child goes to another school but decides they want to go back to their resident school, they would need to notify me by March 1st in order to transfer that next year. The transportation is not provided to students under this procedure. So if they choose to go to another school, that transportation piece is up to their parents. In typical years, applications will be due by April 15th. This year, our applications will be due by July 1, and then decisions will follow just 2 weeks later. Students who We've already said that they're expected to stay if they start. And again, reiterating no mid-year transfers. And this is specific only to kids that are within this district. It is not contemplating kids from somewhere outside of the ERUUSD moving to you. Any questions on that procedure? So last year, when you had this conversation, you had said as a board, I think that was one of the first conversations we had, was around how long do we want to take to ramp up to this? So you had originally said you wanted to wait until not have it be live next year. You wanted it to be for the following year. NMV's articles were set up differently, so they're ready to go for this upcoming school year.
Can we go against articles of agreement, or I thought they were kind of like the bylaws that we had to follow, but no, we could actually do.
I believe that yours, I will, while you're doing that, I'm going to look up. I believe that the one for choice was one that the board could change, but the one for the continuity of like the grade levels that you're serving was one that had to be specific to the community. Oh, wait a minute.
I don't think there's anything that prevents you from taking up the choice policy now, and there's nothing that requires you to take it up now. So you're allowed to punt it indefinitely if you want to, but you can take it up now if you want to as well.
Have we had any requests to this yet?
You have had requests. I want you to have the general conversation, but I'm rereading. I have a copy of the back page of the articles, and Morgan and I have some question about what the voters amended this year fell under this same article. And I think we need to go back and look at what the warning said on the ballot, because this all fell under number 3. And what you amended was around Article 2, number 3, about continuity of grades operated. The language should have remained around attendance, but I'm not sure that that was on the warning. So we might need to double check with our legal counsel on what happened to that language. Did that language get deleted, or does that language still exist? Morgan, I think you and I have some work to do on this now that I'm rereading it. I think you could have the conversation about the direction, but take your action in June, whether or not you want to move forward with the thinking of holding true to your original thought process or amending that in some way.
Board thoughts?
I'm leaning towards wait till next year and take it up.
I'm with Kevin on that. I think we should just wait.
Rick, any idea?
I don't really have any feelings one way or another. If we have a lot of requests, then maybe taking it up now, but if we don't have a lot of requests, I don't mind waiting either.
I mean, I do know the situation comes up, but I'm also not opposed to waiting as well. For instance, I had a parent reach out to me. I directed them towards their school principal, but they were losing their housing in Richford. So he had to, had to move to Enosburg, and was afraid that he couldn't find housing in Enosburg, and he was afraid that his kids were going to be moved out of the school. So, I mean, things come up. I understand that this is a situation, but I'm also not opposed to waiting.
Let's wait then.
Morgan, I think Morgan looked back at the article. Do you want to just speak to that, Morgan? Not sure if Morgan's still. He sent a message that said that what was warned for the voters replaced all of 3. So that's why we struggled a little bit with this, because your attendance language was not in there. So he thought we did that deliberately. And that's one of the details that I'm not remembering from the conversation. So if you want to wait until the following year, we can definitely do that.
It sounds like, yeah, we would want to wait maybe.
Okay, so I want to bring up this other policy that we have been working to develop, and there are, before we dig too deeply in this, I just want to describe why we are bringing this up. We have some kids who live in some of the communities whose their school of residence is really far from where they live. I'm going to give you some examples. Our board chair, Polly Rico, lives pretty close to Montgomery and actually has to drive through Berkshire to be able to get to Enosburg, which is her town of legal residence. So there are other examples of kids who live way at the top of Enosburg Mountain on the mountainside, transported from down through Montgomery on Montgomery bus to meet up with a bus to go to their school of residence. Probably, I'm not sure how many, maybe a dozen within the system. And this procedure for inter-district transfer would contemplate a way for those families who lived in a town and then they had to drive through a different town to get to their school that they could attend, even if it was, this would all only apply within FNESU. It's not inclusive of any other districts. But if there are kids that live closest to Montgomery and have to drive through Montgomery to get to Richford Elementary, they could attend Montgomery under this policy or under this procedure. So this is something I'm going to bring. I wanted to just tip you to this. This is something we're going to bring back at your June meeting for discussion. And this is a policy I would like you to think about moving forward with for next year. Similar to the other policy, transportation is the responsibility of the student's family. And there would be language about if there was space in the other school. Make sense? Okay.
Yeah, hey Lynn, I think that there actually is something in your big giant law book about this. I think I remember reading something about this during the Act 46 stuff.
There's a lot of things in that big giant law book. Rick, can you tell me a little more?
Yeah, not really. But I remember reading about this this specific situation when I think I was looking up school choice or something in there. I can't remember what I was looking up, but I know that you gave me a book with the page marked.
What did that have to do with extraordinary costs for services? Was that we were trying to unpack?
No, but it had this exact scenario in it where you had, a student, and I can remember when I read it, the thought came across my mind was actually Montgomery, Enosburg, because when you go down Enosburg Mountain Road on the other side, part of that's in Enosburg, even though it's quite a lot closer and more convenient to go to Montgomery. So I remember thinking about that, but I know there's a law or something written in that book about this exact same scenario.
Yeah, we're working with our attorney on this procedure too, Rick. So I feel like what we're trying to accomplish right now isn't necessarily contemplated, but we have the capacity to be able to establish these transfer procedures within our organization. So I can check back in with him to see if there's something I'm missing in the law book, but he's had a couple of looks at this already.
So I haven't read this yet, but I guess my first question is, so can the reverse apply as well? So say we did not want to go over the mountain to pick up one student on the Enosburg side. Could we have them, could we say, no, you have to go to Montgomery?
We have not had that part of the conversation yet, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I definitely would want to push that out. I think that might be a little bit of a sticky wicket, but I'll push that out in my next communication with PHO.
Okay.
So I'll send this out. It'll be up for discussion at the June meeting. That's all there is for policy, Polly. So is Polly frozen?
Nope, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So next we have Morgan. Yeah, you're up.
Okay, and I've got a lot, so I'm going to try to blow through this kind of quickly. I sent the financial report out to you by email before the meeting this time, so you guys all have that in your inboxes if you haven't seen it. I can answer any questions on that if you've got them. I've not looked at the budget and predicting where you're going to end at year end since the March report, but there's been nothing, no major news on that, I guess. FY21, Lynn and I are going to tag team on that, so we'll take that up in Lynn's section towards the end of the meeting. I've got a couple of things that are going to require action. The first one is around the tax anticipation note, and this is the line of credit that we get ready to go on July 1 so that we can cover payroll over the summer, and also this year specifically, given the concerns around the financial picture related to COVID, we're anticipating that towns may not be able to transfer property tax to the school districts on the same schedule that they did last year. And so the main reason that this amount is going up is that when I went in and did a cash flow for next year, I assumed that we weren't going to start seeing any tax money until December, whereas in the past, I know at least Alan has tried to get it all cleaned up and sent over to the schools a couple months before that. So that is the reason for the increase. And the motion that I would need is in your board report. And I can read it if you need me to.
Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the tax anticipation note for the increased amount?
I'll make the motion. I don't see what I'm supposed to read, so I'll let Morgan read it.
Sure, it's a motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign away from the table the tax revenue anticipation note and related borrowing resolution and tax certificate for a straight line of credit not to exceed $2,596,000 with Community Bank NA to June 30th, 2021.
So we'll take a vote to allow me to sign away from the table for that increased amount. So taking a vote, Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And I.
Oh yeah, Wendy just got here. She has some internet problems, but she's just joined us.
Okay, great. Wendy, did you hear that motion?
I heard it, but I don't know what it's about.
Basically,
Just walked in.
okay, basically, the vote is to give me authority to sign away from the table, so not at a meeting, to sign a tax anticipation note for a line of credit that would allow us to draw funds in case the money is not there. If you're in favor, you can say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you. At the last meeting, we talked about the possibility of picking up a property adjacent to Cold Hollow, also around the ADA report that Nate is working through and the needed upgrades to the buildings. We brought the idea of hiring an architect firm to come and to look at the property and the potential and give you, the board, some options around what a minimum renovation project would look like, what maybe moving the sugar house down to that property would look like, which is something that a decision that needs to be made in the next probably year or two. I asked for quotes from Black River Design and from Doran Whittier, which was a recommendation of Nate's, for services to review that facility and give you that report. I forwarded both of their proposals to you. At the end of the meeting, we can go into executive to discuss contract negotiations and decide which of these two, if either you would want to enter a contract in with to do that work. I will say that in open meeting that I did do reference checks on Doran Whittier. The two people who called me back both gave them good reviews. One person hasn't contacted me back yet. And then I didn't do any reference checking for Black River because we've used them probably a dozen times in this SU and continue to. So that I think we can do an executive at the end of the meeting, unless you want to kind of hop in and hop out now.
No, we can wait till the end.
Okay. The other thing that I would do in executive is around lawn care contracts. Avery Stanley, who did your mowing last year for the Enosburg schools, told me a couple weeks ago that because of COVID and workforce issues that he doesn't have the manpower to keep up with all of his contracts and that he was not going to be able to do the Enosburg schools. I asked for bids from a half dozen folks. I got 3 bids back from Steve Coombs, Jeff Lawyer, and Justin King. We can go into executive at the end to discuss those and decide who you want to contract with as well.
Good.
And then this, I don't think we need to do in executive. We bid out the copier contracts for NMV and for the SU. When we did that, I asked them to do a review of the Enosburg-Richford schools and to give us a quote. So you do not have a contract with SPC, but I am recommending that you enter one and that you make a motion to accept one of their bids. It would be for a 5-year contract. There's a replacement schedule worked in there, and I did send you the comparison by email, and it looks like it would save about $10,000 a year across all 6 of your schools. So I can answer any questions on that, and then if you're so inclined, the 2 motions would be: first, a motion to authorize the superintendent to execute the contract with Specialized Purchasing Consultants Corporation. And the second motion would be to authorize the superintendent to execute and deliver a tax-exempt lease purchase agreement with MST Government Leasing LLC with an aggregate purchase price not exceeding $113,305.24.
Are there any questions?
And the
Okay,
vendor would be the same one that you're using now, so there really wouldn't be any change in terms of the service or the types of machines that the schools currently have.
Is the contract currently between both Richford and Enosburg, or is it separate contracts for each? And now
Separate
it's going to be
contract
one.
for every machine, so this would get all of them on a single contract.
Oh, right. Gotcha. That makes sense. Do I have a motion to authorize the superintendent to, what was the first one, to enter into?
To execute the contract with Specialized Purchasing Consultants Corporation.
That. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'm going to call a vote. Am I frozen?
You're good
You're
now.
back.
Okay. Kevin, you want to do a vote?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Wendy?
I
So moved. Do I have a second motion, and that is to authorize the superintendent and fill in the rest for me, Morgan?
To execute and deliver a tax-exempt lease purchase agreement with MST Government Leasing LLC with an aggregate purchase price not exceeding $113,305.24.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, now I'm going to call a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Wendy?
I
So moved.
And that's all I have until the end of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, Kelly, I think, do you have anything other than your report?
I have 3 new hires. Anna Tracy as reading interventionist, Abby Gray and Peyton Whittelek as classroom teachers. I don't know if you need I do have them written in my report if you need the spelling for those.
I saw that, yeah.
If you want to wait, we can do all of the action items under mine. I have them comprehensively, so if principals can just notify the board of those hires, I think that would be good.
Yeah, okay. And then we can take action at the end, okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kelly, or you're good?
The rest is informational.
Okay. Michelle, how about you?
I have nothing more than what's in the board report.
Rachel?
I had one teacher, and I'm wondering now if this is an SU thing, Lynn, but my reading teacher is moving to Florida, so but it's technically an SU grant funded position, so just accepting his letter of resignation, and the position is posted.
We already did that at the SU meeting.
All set then.
Great. Joseph?
Yes, I have a part-time French teacher hired, sharing that with Beth, and she can talk about that for her too. And then we were waiting on a contract to be signed and turned in and an offer accepted. Anthony Sorrentino for AD. That's official and in place. And the French teacher is Amy Merriam.
Great.
Okay. There was a question of action on resignation for Bridget O'Leary and Jason Hart. Those letters are in and in the hands of HR.
Great.
I have all that.
Yeah, I saw that on your report. Good. And then Nate.
No, no new hires or anything. That the only update I really have is the grant for the culinary program is going to be a no-go. The reasoning being the culinary program at Northwest Tech is not at full capacity, and so it was suggested that we really start forming more partnerships with them, and maybe they send us kids from their outdoor program and into our diversified and forestry program, and we send them culinary students from Enosburg-Richford. So I have done not any other legwork other than report that to you guys at this point, but that is a partnership that we're going to explore in the future. Obviously a lot of issues with that around scheduling, because BFA has a different schedule. It's not the same every day as our schedules are. So it'd be a tough partnership, but it's not unnecessarily impossible. So that leaves the culinary piece in the hands of Joseph and Beth of how they're going to handle a foods program. And then my only other action item is the parent property. So that's all I have.
And that property we're talking about in board business, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Lynn, you're up.
You missed Beth.
What? Ah, Beth, right at the top. I'm sorry, Beth.
Hello. I just have a couple of additional hires that weren't listed. Peter Giovanni is hired for Spanish, and Joseph already talked about the employee we share, Amy Merriam, and Tara Ryan has been hired for the one-year position for Kyle Kramer's leave of absence. Everything else is informational.
Great, thanks. Now, Lynn.
Okay. So I feel like I have talked to many of you because of the SU board meeting, but not all of you. So I'll just give some updates around where we are currently. So, we've gotten kind of out of that mode of being super reactive when we had to shift in without the warning. So now we're finding ways to be really a lot more strategic about how we're moving forward with supporting families and students. And there are a lot of really good things happening. And there are also a lot of things happening that we know that we can learn from and improve upon if we find ourselves in some form of remote learning opportunity beyond this year. So I think that one of the things that I think is true of our organization is that we continue to really be thinking ahead to what might be coming next. And that's kind of been a pattern throughout this, is I think that we're pretty well positioned to respond when kind of the new requirements are coming our way. So we know ahead of us right now, we have to start thinking about end of the year, and we have to start thinking about what summer programming might look like. So we just received, we're preparing ourselves to send information out to our seniors and their families, and then also middle school families to just talk about what they can expect for those end of the year celebrations. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of mine. There are a lot of things that we're still having to navigate and figure out in terms of services for kids in special education. And I think that, there's, in terms of this remote learning piece, that's a huge barrier. It's very challenging for kids to receive services in this way, especially for those kids who are without internet access. It's even more complicated. So that's something that, we're continuing to lean into and try to figure out. I think our special educators and our special ed department they've been doing some really good work around that. I'm recognizing, Michelle, that we have something we wanted to talk to the board about in terms of updates moving forward, and I did not put that on the agenda. So I apologize, but this might be a good time to talk about that under mine. It's probably not under COVID, but let's put it under other when we get to the bottom of my agenda. In terms of COVID-19, we know that there are some pretty big financial implications from what's been happening in our world. So we know that funding for public education is a statewide funding mechanism, and a lot of the revenue sources that feed into the education fund are based on consumption taxes and our lottery system. And there's not a lot happening with rooms and meals and sales and use and lottery sales right now. So there is an anticipation that we are going to have about a $150 million shortfall in FY21. We had a meeting with the joint fiscal offices on May 4th, and although the outlook was much more bleak than it was when we met with them a couple weeks prior to that, there were some things that we talked about in that meeting that I think many of us who sat in on it were feeling a little more hopeful at the end of that meeting. So I think that one thing that wasn't evident until that meeting was that the CARES Act comes through, which we know we're going to be getting more information on the CARES Act money and how that's going to be applied in Vermont. There's $31 million coming in Vermont, and then there's some additional other grants coming behind it. There's also another wave of relief coming from the federal government behind that, and they're hoping that there'll be some greater flexibility with that money. So that was something that I think made us all take a little bit of a sigh of relief to know that there's a little more potential to fill that budget shortfall that is anticipated. I think that, they definitely talked about some of the strategies that they hadn't talked about before. We know that the CARES Act money that's coming in has to go out to the LEAs. 90% has to go out to the LEA level, meaning the district level. We know another strategy is about that next wave of federal relief. We know that there's a piece of that strategy that may include not completely filling the shortfall in the reserve fund, which would account for almost $4 million. And there was a strategy that they talked about at the state level, I think that certainly would be more palatable to our taxpayers. The reality is if we try to backfill the $150 million in a one-year period, what that would do to property taxes for our families who are really struggling right now and many who are out of work wouldn't be sustainable for most of those families. So one of the strategies they've talked about is borrowing at the state level and then spreading that out over multiple years so that it would be something that would be more palatable, more for all of our taxpayers in our communities. So Morgan, do you want to weigh in a little bit more? Anything you want to add on that? Is he still
I think that's a good, yeah, I'm still here. I think that's a good synopsis. Lynn and I both felt better after the last JFO update than we did after the first one, because it seems like, from my perspective, the solutions that are still on the table are all fairly logical, and some of the nuttier ones have kind of lost steam. They do have a lot of different levers that they can pull, but it's going to involve, in large part, spreading the pain out over a couple of years. The other thing that that sort of is underlying this is that the Joint Fiscal Office is making assumptions on how quickly the economy is going to go back, and some of these non-tax revenues are going to bounce back. And they're doing that not knowing even when these places are going to be opening up again, or what things are going to look like in November, December, when the second wave of the virus supposedly comes. So I think there's, even in their estimates, there's a lot of uncertainty.
So the one part of this that I didn't talk about was the impact on fiscal year 20. So I'm hoping, Morgan, you could take the lead on this part of it. There's definitely an anticipated deficit in this fiscal year as well. Can you talk a little bit about the time frame issues associated this year, Morgan?
Sure. So they are anticipating a big hit this year. A lot of that has to do with pushing off collection of rooms and meals tax, as well as just not being able to collect much on those use taxes for the last 4 or 5 months of the year. They were anticipating a pretty healthy surplus at the end of the year before this hit, and now I think the latest numbers were about $150 million swing. I think it's around $8 million is a penny on the tax rate. So if they were trying to make that up in 1 year, that would be, somewhere in the neighborhood of a 20-cent hit. The issue for FY20 is really one that's more of a cash flow issue at the state level. And it sounds like from everything that I've heard that they've, figured out how to do that without doing any clawbacks for current year expenses. So I think, because we're sort of only 6 weeks away from the end of this year, we're relatively secure in terms of that funding, and the supervisor union and Enosburg-Richford have received all the revenue that they're due from the state at this point. So the bigger concern is cash flow for FY21, and is the state going to have the money to give us the tax revenue that we're supposed to get from the budgets that you've passed, and we haven't started yet. And then for me, the biggest concern is FY22, and when they figure out how they're going to solve this problem, when we start looking at your budgets in November, December, is flatlining a budget going to mean a 10-cent increase or a 5-cent increase or a 20-cent increase? And so, once we know that in December, there's probably going to be hard conversations in a lot of districts across the state. Did I miss anything, Lynn?
No, I think that you do a much better job describing this year than I. I think that the moral of the story is that we know that as a state we have financial troubles ahead. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. But again, what we walked away with is that there are some hopeful strategies on the table for figuring out how to navigate this time in education. So if there are no...
I was just going to say, one positive I appreciated was the representative from Welch's office in on that meeting.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're working really hard to build up infrastructure as far as broadband, and like this is kind of the wake-up call of what needed to happen, and they sounded like they were trying to get money for that. So it was a little positive to know that we weren't being ignored, I guess.
He was very, I agree, Polly. He talked about how they're going to advocate hard that the next wave of money has the needed flexibilities to be responsive to the unique challenges of Vermont. And I definitely did appreciate the broadband piece. I also know that we have Representative Hango on this call, and I just want to mention that she's been doing a lot of good work to support us in terms of broadband, and she has, certainly been kept abreast of where we were when we started in terms of access for our families and our students, and where we are now. And she's even offered to help us be a bridge with Consolidated Communications to make sure that families are getting what they need in terms of access. So Lisa, we appreciate the work that you're doing to support families in our area, especially around broadband. So where we pivot next is our thinking about next year. And one of the things that is challenging around that is we don't know what next year is going to look like. In our current reality, we haven't had students in the building. So we have been in a position where we have been people have been working remotely. There have been some jobs that have still continued on in the buildings physically, especially around food and facilities. We've had several staff members who, have had issues either with their own autoimmune issues, or they have been caring for people with autoimmune issues, which has prevented them from being able to be physically present in some cases. So their work has been remote. However, as we lean into next year, not knowing what next year is going to look like, not knowing what we're going to get for guidance in terms of how we attend to some of those needs around folks who can't report to work for one reason or another, you can imagine it really complicates some of the thinking processes that need to happen. So what we all heard the secretary say last Friday is that he's hopeful that we can return in the fall. What I'm also hearing him say is that school is not going to look like traditional school until there's a vaccine for the coronavirus. So that could mean another year or 18 months. It really depends on that vaccine. So what we're likely moving into is some in person and some continued remote learning opportunities. We may be having some time periods where we're open and other time periods that we're closed. We're having to navigate the reality of reactive school closures. That will be something that will be new for our schools to deal with. So if there are people who have the virus within the school or have been connected with the school, we will likely have to go into 2-week periods of closure. So we're trying to navigate all that and what that means to us as an organization. We're also trying to navigate, some just initial thought processes around how do we meet the guidelines in terms of the 6-foot rule for physical distancing with the number of students that we have in our classes. So there's going to be a lot of conversation, a lot of planning that goes into scheduling, and that might look different than it currently does. So stay tuned for that. There's a lot of work that's going to be happening in the coming months to prepare us for whatever scenario it is that we'll be faced with as we return in the fall. Any questions on any of that around COVID? Anything any administrators want to add in there? Okay. So if you're good, Polly, I'll move into personnel.
Yep.
I have in my board notes, your board notes are, I have to give these in advance. So I think I gave this to Doreen 8 or 9 days ago. Maybe not quite that long ago. It's hard to distinguish like real time or COVID time these days. So you have several retirements just as an information, because you have already accepted these retirements. So retiring from Enosburg Elementary, Cecile Stebbins and Michelle Lucier. From Enosburg High School, Joe Marcial, Kay Mahaffey, Chris Brigham. Joe Marcial he also was working at Richford. So we'll be sad to see those folks leave FNESU, but certainly thankful for all they have contributed in all these years. So you have a list of resignations, some of which you have already acted on, some that you haven't. So I'm just going to go over the resignations and ask you to act on the most recent resignations, which are highlighted in bold. So for Enosburg Elementary, Anna Tracy, none from the middle school. From Enosburg High School, Nikki Krebs left mid-year. Carly Wilkes, Jessica Villeneuve, Jason Hart, and Bridget O'Leary, none from Cold Hollow. From Richford Elementary, Erica Sherman left mid-year. Megan West, Michelle Weed, Colleen Charnley, and Ryan Patnode. From Richford Senior High School, Kyle Kramer is on a 1-year leave. Katie Gesser, Nelson Mayhew, and Brian Garvey. So if you would make a motion to approve the resignations, to accept the resignations.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion to accept the resignations.
I'm going to take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
So moved.
In terms of new hires within your buildings, can you hear me? My internet just is a little unstable. Enosburg Elementary, Jennifer Hubbard has been hired as principal and Tanya Caswell as a teacher. Enosburg Middle School, no new hires. Enosburg High School, you have Michelle Weed as a school counselor, Brian Garvey for Spanish, Brooke McGraw for math, and Anthony Sorrentino as an athletic director. Cold Hollow, no hires. Richford Elementary, Carolyn Hassan, Courtney Jones, Peyton Whittelek, and Abby Gray. For Richford, Kelly, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Are those all classroom teachers? One of those is a school counselor, and I'm not remembering which one.
No, none of those are school counselors. They are classroom teachers. And then I would just add to that, who am I adding? Anna Tracy as reading interventionist.
Okay. So Anna's not going to need to be approved by this board because that is a grant funded position, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But informational, she'll be joining you at Richford Elementary. At Richford Junior Senior High School, Amber Ross will be teaching high school ELA. James Hubbard will be the athletic director. Tara Ryan will be taking the 1-year middle school ELA position. Peter, I don't know how to say that, Govani is the new Spanish teacher, and Amy Marion is the French teacher split between Richford and Enosburg. So if you would make a motion to approve the new hires, it'd be great.
I'll make it.
Okay, I'm going to take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
So moved.
Hey, Lynn, I do have a question. How did we end up doing as far as total staff turnover this year? About the same as normal, more, less?
I can't answer that yet, Rick, because we're not quite done. We still have, we have probably a dozen extensions still out.
Okay.
After May 15th, I'll be able to get you that.
And is there still another elementary teacher at Enosburg that needs to be hired, or are we good?
You still have an elementary teacher position there. I'm going to go over those in just 1 second.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anna's position.
That's what I was counting, but I couldn't keep track.
Lynn, I have a quick question about the resignations. Do we still conduct exit interviews, and are we going to get feedback on those eventually?
So you asked me about that earlier in the year. You asked me to do the in-person exit interviews, which I will do. I haven't done those in the past. We have done the online surveys, and I'll still do the surveys, but my intention is, I have it in my calendar to start on June 1, scheduling time with everyone who's leaving to do kind of a face-to-face remote. It'll have to be remote this year, but an exit interview.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of extensions, you still have 1, 2, 3, 4 people, one at Enosburg High School and 3 at Richford Elementary School who haven't yet signed their contracts. I think they're still in the process of exploring other positions. In terms of remaining open positions, you have at Enosburg Elementary an elementary teacher. At the middle school, you have a part-time reading interventionist that's grant funded. At the high school, at Enosburg High School, you have the Dean of Students, Family Consumer Science, and French you don't still have French, right? Cold Hollow has no openings. Richford Elementary still has a school counselor and an elementary teacher position. Principals, did I miss anything? Okay, I have nothing under student. Recently, your negotiation team settled an agreement, a 1-year agreement with the Cold Hollow Education Association for the collective bargaining agreement. So I would ask the board to make a motion to ratify the collective bargaining agreement. You all received a copy of that from Morgan. And we also welcome any questions you have. Rick was our chief negotiator, so I'm sure he would love to answer your questions, right, Rick?
Are there any questions out there?
Absolutely.
Okay, if we don't have any questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make it.
I'm going to take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
And then Rick?
Aye.
So moved. It is ratified.
Thank you. So I had Doreen send out copies of the school calendars for each of the schools on in the ERUUSD. So you can see what those look like. I'm just going to go over conceptually what some of the changes are throughout the SU, not in each of the individual calendars. So the way we do this is we create one SU calendar that accounts for the 4 SU in-service days. Each principal then takes that calendar and they put in their 6 local in-service days, and that's what creates the individual school calendars. So there are a couple of differences in this year's school calendar. One is that Labor Day is falling pretty late this year. So we usually have a three-day week, a 4-day week, and a 5-day week, and it's just going to ramp up a little differently this year. Last fall, I had asked for board approval to have 2 early release days within the SU. So we have 2 early release days that are embedded, one in October, one in February, and that will allow teachers to have planning time, professional development time in the afternoon on both of those days. And we're going to be partnering with our after school program staff in order to provide options for kids who don't choose to go, whose parents are working on those days. Still will be a place for those kids. This year for Thanksgiving break on them, it went pretty well. I think we were all pleased with how that went this year. In terms of the December break, we don't find the couple of days that lead up to the holiday break to be our best instructional days with kids. And the way that calendar was kind of looking was that the Monday and Tuesday would have been student days. So instead we decided to turn those 2 days, the 21st and 22nd of December, into in-service days. So our kids actually do get a pretty lengthy break. They get a 2-week break at the winter holiday this year. And those are the only changes to the kind of the format of that calendar. Does anybody have any questions about the calendar? So I would ask for the board to make a motion to approve the calendars.
I'll
Do we have
make
a motion?
to approve the calendar.
Good. Okay, having a motion, I'll take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay. So I've asked Michelle to attend this meeting, and I apologize for not getting that on the agenda. So Michelle's been working really hard with both Joseph and Beth and her special ed staff to lean in and try to figure out how we can best provide high quality services to students in both of these communities. So I'm going to ask Michelle to take it from here.
So some of you already heard this, but for those that haven't, we just want to talk about a program that has shifted. And beginning next year, and Joseph and Beth, feel free to jump in at any time if I'm forgetting things. So we're working hard to build stronger programs and not duplicate them between the 2 high schools. And we found a special educator who is certified in intensive needs
And so we thought it would be best to house the intensive needs program at Richford High School instead of having one program in Enosburg and one in Richford, to put the intensive needs in Richford. And since we've started a behavioral program that's been improving and going really well at Enosburg High School, we thought that we would house the behavior program for both high schools at Enosburg. So there will be a shift for next year. The intensive needs program is going to be called TAPS, transitioning into adult programs and services. And then the behavior program we're going to call STEP, which is Student Therapeutic Educational Placement Program. So just wanted to share that with you.
So would that be age specific, or would it be K-12? No, it's high school.
Yeah, both will be high school, 9 to 12. We're, at least the behavior program, I was working on an alternative, I can't talk, on an alternative program, and then COVID happened and that kind of took a back seat. But we're talking about how to incorporate middle school at Enosburg High School into the behavior program, but we haven't gotten that far yet to figure out details.
Yeah, gotcha. Sounds great.
So this feels like a good first step to try to figure out how to work collaboratively across district within the SU to be able to do this. One of the points that I want to make sure that people hear is that this would not require that students transfer out of their home school. So if there was a Richford student who was attending Enosburg's program, they still would be considered a Richford student, and vice versa. If there was an Enosburg student attending Richford's program, they would still be considered an Enosburg student.
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Michelle, who's been working closely with me throughout the year to really observe and assess the current behavioral program, which you folks know as CORE. And Lindsay and Morris and her team have been doing a nice job over the past few years of putting that together. But we wanted to tighten up criteria for participation in that program. And so Michelle and I have been working closely with Lindsay and her team to look at how we can do that so that we can match up the right services with the right kids. One big step in that direction for the STEP program is moving those kids from the basement level of the school up to the first floor. And they'll be moving into the space here at the high school where Louise Green's program has been operating. It puts those kids and that staff in close proximity to the foods program that Kay Mahaffey has worked in all these years. So it'll be right next door to the kitchen and the sewing machines and the laundry and all of that, which really enhances their ability to become more proficient in life skills training. It's also adjacent to the counseling and guidance offices, and it puts kids who tend to be more marginalized into the mainstream, and so breaking down those false walls that divide kids often into social emotional groups. I'm excited about it. It's like the kids are coming upstairs into the light. It's really nice, and I just want to thank you, Michelle, for all the support you've given this school from the time we opened doors in September.
Sounds great. And Lynn, she was on the agenda.
Mm-hmm. She was number 11.
Number 11. Exactly. Anything else, Michelle, or are you good?
No, that's it. Thanks.
So I usually have
Thank
my
you.
paper copy of my agenda, and tonight I'm trying to navigate 3 different screens. Sorry, I missed that.
I do have
Yeah,
one.
sounds like an occupation.
I just want to tell everybody that I locked my door this time so that when I was talking, my kids couldn't come in and interrupt and embarrass me. So I made it through.
Good job.
That was the highlight of the meeting, Michelle.
Next, we have board business.
I have one.
Oh, Lynn, okay.
Holly. So I wanted to give you an update in terms of end of the year graduation celebrations. I think that, last Friday was a big day for us. We were waiting to see what the parameters would be in order to determine how many people we could have come in for in-person. I'm pretty excited about what this team has come up with, and I know this is a public meeting and I'm going to give you a broad brushstroke. I would rather not give all of the specific details because I want those principals to be able to communicate with their students, and we'll make sure that you get some of the finer grained details too. The reality is that it's going to be a group that we can have come into the building, including the staff members who will have to be present. There will be an element where there will be a live students receiving their diploma. That won't necessarily be on the day of typical graduation, but then it will culminate with an event that we think will be pretty interesting for the graduates, and some sort of a celebration after the event that will include the community as well. So we have told people that we'll be releasing details about that soon. And today we had another planning meeting, and I feel like we got much closer to where we're going to land, and we have partners that we're working with. I think we probably can get to a place where we're finalized. We can finalize those plans on Friday. Joseph and Beth, are you thinking that's reasonable?
Yes.
And then we'll be able to communicate out more broadly after that. Okay, so stay tuned, and we're going to give you a much more detailed description of what we're planning. Any questions on that? Okay, that's it.
Okay, great. Okay, so now we're on to board, or anything else, Lynn, or are you good?
I'm all done.
Okay. Monteith House contract. I spoke with the rec committee, and I spoke with the town about extending the Monteith House contract until December. And at that point, we would know the armory would become in the town's possession. And so more would be known about the placement of the community center. And they're in agreement in extending that contract. Any questions? Information I'm missing?
Sounds good.
Property purchase process. Morgan, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I wonder if you're going to want a motion on the books for extending the lease.
Oh, okay. So do you have a motion to extend the lease till December for the Monteith House?
I'll make the motion.
Having a motion, I'm going to take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
And Rick? Okay. And I'll say aye as well, because I can't hear Rick. So moved.
Aye, we're good. Aye. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
So Morgan, property purchase process. That was an alliteration for all of you people out there.
So we are thinking that we will still have statewide primary elections in August. And so you've got your town clerks and your election workers already counting ballots at that point. So that would be a good target date if you did want to consider putting the purchase of the property next to Cold Hollow up on the ballot for the voters. In order to do that, we need to be prepared at your June meeting or shortly thereafter to warn that vote. And so we would need at least a purchase price, ideally a purchase price and an agreement with the seller. So I think what would make sense is for you to give your board chair the authority to negotiate with the seller a purchase agreement for that property, knowing that that's that's not ultimately your decision. It would just be something that we would set up, and then we would use that price to go forward for an August vote, if we can pull that off in time. Polly, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Should we discuss it a little bit in executive, or just give Polly? Maybe we should discuss a little bit of it in executive, Morgan.
I think you should, because you want to give Polly some guardrails on how far to go. But we would come out of executive, and that's the motion that we would be looking for, if that's something that you're still interested in.
Okay, so let's talk about that in executive. Let's see, other. Do we have another? Anybody out there in the board have an other? No. Set future agenda items. Anything you see that we need to talk about next meeting? No? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to go into executive, but before we do, I want to say thank you all principals for all you're doing. We greatly appreciate it, for sure.
Before you go into executive,
yeah.
I just want to recap for folks the process. If you're not invited into executive, I will put you into the waiting room. If you are still in the waiting room when the board comes out of executive session, I will let you back in at that point. Amanda, if you want to cut out, I can take notes for the motions that the board makes outside of executive and just email that to you. And then in terms of who should be in executive, I think we want Nate there, obviously, for the 2 Cold Hollow discussions. I think for the lawn care, you want your Enosburg principals in executive, and unless Lynn has another idea, I don't know that we need anybody else in there.
And thank you to all the public that decided to hang out at our meeting. So thank you. So I'll have a motion to go into executive.
So the first one will be to discuss purchase of property.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to enter executive session for purchase of property.
Kevin, do I have a vote?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Okay, we're moved into executive at 7 o'clock.
Let me let the guy back in. And you're out of executive?
So do I have a motion to give the board chair authority to negotiate the purchase of the property?
I'll make that motion to act as per executive session.
As per executive session, thank you. So Kevin, do I have a vote?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy? Rick?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. And Morgan, you'll be in touch with me about that, I'm assuming?
Yes, I will.
Okay. So now I need a motion to go back into executive session to discuss mowing bid?
Contract negotiation?
Contract negotiation. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to enter for contract negotiations.
Okay. Can I have your vote?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Okay, we're in executive. Okay, do I have a motion to direct Morgan to negotiate a mowing contract with Jeff Lawyer as per executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Having a motion, I'll take a vote. unless there's
Aye.
any conversation. Good. Mort,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Rick. Okay, so moved. Then I'll entertain a motion to execute a contract with, or have Morgan execute a contract with Black River Design as per executive session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll entertain votes. So Kevin,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
and Rick. So moved. And so now I think we're at the end of a meeting. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Kevin, can I have your vote?
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
we are adjourned.